These three have the most emotional endings in anime, starting with number 1, A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice is an anime movie starring two main characters, Shoya Ishida and Shoko Nishimiya. Shoko was born with impaired hearing or deaf. The reason I say or is because back in elementary school, Shoya pulls a prank on her by yelling in her ear, which actually startles her, which leads us to believe that she's not all the way deaf, but she's just severely impaired, which would explain the doctor scene later on in the movie. So Shoko ends up moving to another school because she's being bullied, and even though she was being bullied by him, she was still trying her best efforts to make friends with him. But eventually she couldn't take it anymore and she just had to move away to another school. And about 5 years later, they both meet back up and they've changed. And it's clear that Ishida was still running from his past, and Shoko hates herself. In fact, Shoko hated herself so much she was actually planning on ending herself, much like Shoya in the beginning. The difference is, she actually attempted to do it. And though Shoya was able to save her, he wasn't able to save himself from falling over. Now, the ending to this anime is actually very deep because it really starts in the beginning. In fact, if I would have paid attention to the X's in the beginning and what they stand for, I would have gave it a higher rating than I did the first time. To be clear, my own personal rating. I told you guys I'm not ranking these anime. If you pay attention to all the X's in the show, you notice how after elementary school, everyone Shoya meets has an X on their face. But throughout the show, the more he interacts with people, the more X's fall off their faces. Except some of them. And at the end of the show, everyone he's built a friendship with and reconnected with, they all go to the festival. And you see him finally tune back into the world. He finally feels like it's okay for him to live. And that no one's looking at him or judging him. He's just there. He's just there in the moment. He can finally live his life without worrying about the past. Speaking of the past, next up, Anohana. Anohana is about a group of friends that were out playing one day and eventually one of them has an accident, that one being Menma. The accident I'm referring to was a fatal one, and because of this accident, little by little, everyone started to leave the friend group. Now when they do get older, some way, somehow, Jintan is the only one that can still see her. Now out of that whole friend group, Tetsudo is the only one that Jinta thinks will actually believe him when he says he can still see Menma. Now being the good supportive friend Tetsudo actually is, he believes him, but he kind of makes a fool of himself because he goes around the room looking for her, trying to actually see her, though he actually can't. But he still believes his friend, and that's what matters. And it seems to be clear that everyone in that friend group has regrets about what happened that day, and things that they never got to tell Menma throughout the show, which eventually leads to their meeting on the hill, where they were all left a final word from Menma. And to the rest of the group's surprise, they were all able to see her once again. But before we get to the last anime, I gotta throw an honorable mention. Your Lie in April. This show was so beautiful, bro. If you don't feel anything from watching this show, then you gotta be Ayano Koji, bro. And no disrespect to the GOAT, I'm just saying. The main two characters in the show are Kaori and Kosei, and they both enjoy music. Or at least Kosei did until his mom started getting very strict to the point where she would actually start hitting him. Until one day she actually encouraged him to get back into music. Unfortunately, Kaori wasn't in the best of health herself, but even though she was sick, she was still playing her heart out. Though the sight of her being sick gave Kosei flashbacks about his mom. Though Kosei was getting better at the piano, Kaori's sickness wasn't. In fact, it got so bad that she had to go in for surgery, a life-threatening surgery at that. And though Kosei wanted to be with her, she wanted him to be at that performance, because she wanted them to have their final performance together. And even though Kaori wasn't there physically, she was still there spiritually. But unfortunately, the surgery didn't go well, and she ended up taking a turn for the worse. And for our last anime, Clannad. Y'all should have seen this coming. We all knew this was coming, right? Matter of fact, I'm gonna let y'all in on something. Clannad was actually supposed to be an honorable mention. But I said, you know what? Nah. If you think about it, Clannad's gotta be here. It's gotta be the top 3. You see, Clannad started off as your typical high school anime, right? Lots of jokes, lots of laughs. But that's only in the beginning. This show got more and more progressively sad as you watched it. But that's just the first season. Wait till we get to After Story. Once again, for this show, we have two main characters, Nagisa and Tomoya. So basically, after Tomoya and Nagisa get together, they eventually decide to have a baby. So they eventually have their kid, they named her Ushio. So after Nagisa gives birth to Ushio, she actually ends up passing away because the effects of her illness and her giving childbirth kind of just, combined. And unfortunately, she didn't even get to hold her own kid. And Nagisa's death took such a toll on Tomoya that he actually had to end up leaving Ushio with her parents for a while. But Tomoya eventually does get his shit together, sorry for the language, and he wants to become daddy again. But unfortunately, he wasn't daddy for very long because somehow Ushio inherited her mom's disease. And one day Ushio tells Tomoya that she wants to go on a trip. And though he was reluctant, Tomoya decided that he would take her on a trip as soon as she gets better. And so to prepare for this trip, Tomoya decided to work more hours at his job, so that way they can have as much fun as possible together. However, Ushio's condition had worsened, and though she did get worse, Ushio still wanted to go on the trip. And though Tomiya did honor his daughter's final request, they never made it in the end. Alright guys, there you have it. Those are the top 3 most emotional anime endings, in my opinion. I always have to say in my opinion because I already know there's going to be someone in the comments, where's blah 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 blah? Did you not hear me say in my opinion? But I still do want to hear y'all's opinion. What anime do you think had the most emotional ending? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. I want you guys to stay safe, stay positive, and remember, be mindful.